Well, welcome to episode 4 of season 2 of C.A.R.s, Coffee, and Christ. This is the weekly podcast of our company, Automotive Royale, here in Mounds, Oklahoma. We get to discuss a great topic today. We get to talk about engines today in our 4th episode. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to choose a good engine for your car. We're going to talk a little bit about maybe some famous engines, history of engines, and we're going to also talk about challenging kind of traditional thinking around engines. And hopefully we've got some time. We'll finish by talking about the parallels. We're known for that on our podcast. Parallels between when you need to replace an engine and why God asks us to have a new heart, replacing hearts. So we're going to kind of use that as a parallel and finish the podcast today with that. With me today is going to be 6 guys, including myself. And we're going to have to change the name of the podcast to C.A.R.s, Caffeine in Christ, because I'm the only one, and Josh, with coffee here. Well, okay, that I guess that counts. I guess that counts. Okay.
It's really cool.
It all counts. Okay. We'll keep the name. The name sticks. C.A.R.s Coffee in Christ. C.A.R.s Coffee Caffeination in Christ. And we got Ray Lawson with us. He's our business manager. Joshua King, our CEO and co-owner. JJ Clark. We got Anthony Lee. We got our friend Chris Estelle with us. Mechanics and techs and guys that know what they're talking about today about this stuff as the rest of us learn and listen, and I'm sure many of you will do the same. Should be a lot of fun today. Well, we'll start with something very, very easy, but would be very helpful for me and for a lot of people listening. I mean, what is a combustion engine? Like, what is it? And who could explain it to the novice this morning? I know it's early, but who wants to start us out by answering that question? What is a combustion engine?
Combustion engine would be an engine that goes through a cycle. So you have intake of, you have suck, squeeze, bang, and blow is what's also known as. So you're going to pull air in, you're going to squeeze it, you're going to combust it, and you're going to kick the exhaust out. Yeah. So through those 4 cycles there, you get the ICE engine or the combustion engine, and you have a combustion engine, which would be an ICE engine, and you have like a diesel, which would not be considered a 4-stroke type of engine like
What would be different from a combustion engine and a diesel engine? There's obviously hybrids and stuff that are out there, cars that run off like electricity and gas and
First, pretty big difference is gasoline engines have spark plugs. Yeah. And diesel have like glow plugs. Mm-hmm. So it's more of like heating it up. And that will cause the obviously adding the fuel will cause the combustion to happen. Versus an engine where you deliver fuel and a spark, which would cause it to.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Essentially, if you think about it, like really simplifying it down, you've got a controlled explosion. Yeah. Right. And then from there, everything is about an air pump. Right, like it's about getting air in and getting air out, which is part of that suck and blow portion, right? You have air. And if you think about it, like at a home with your own fire, as you put that billow on that fire, it gets more, right? Mm-hmm. It grows and you get a bigger fire, right? So there are a lot of years of awesome innovation, and I think people often think of engines as a really old technology, but the technology that's going into modern engines is tremendous, and a tremendous amount of innovation, net new technology in this space. And you have a number of different combustion engines. You have your typical combustion engine, which is, a lot of people know them in different cylinders. You hear things like inline 4 or inline 6, V6, V8, and on up into the fun stuff. And then, you've also got new emergence of different engines like rotaries that are still combustion engines. They're just moving compression differently, and they're not using cylinders as we traditionally use. You mentioned electric engines, which would be its own category. which isn't even using combustion. So that would not be in this category that we're kind of talking about. But you are seeing new forms of combustion and fuel, like hydrogen fuels that like Toyota is doing a bunch with right now, and others that are trying, and Honda, who have done like really cool combustion engines around that, because it's a maybe more efficient fuel, or the byproduct is water. So there's a lot of really awesome science that's happening right now in combustion engines in general. But at its very basic sense, we have figured out how to control an explosion and get a rotation motion out of it. Yeah. That's essentially all you're wanting to do. Then from there, everything from there is about gearing and transferring power to the wheels.
Wow. Well, that's already kind of puts all these visuals in my head, how kind of cool that is. And again, seeing the parts, seeing things taken apart, in a shop before, obviously, under a hood, things like that. But hearing how many types there are is kind of mind-boggling a little bit, but kind of cool at the same time. Well, historically, what are some famous engines? If we think about that, obviously we're talking a little about recent innovation. What are historical engines that are kind of like, hey, that's kind of like the go-to, whether it's for a certain brand of car, whether it's like, kind of what kind of ran the industry for a long time. What are some famous engines that kind of people are aware of, go-to, classic, that kind of helped us get to where we are? Yeah.
Well, I think the big three, they each have their own, I guess, classification of famous engines. If you look at like Dodge, I mean, their thing is, and as soon as someone says Dodge, I mean, you think of Hemi. Yeah. Ford has a Hemi as well, but it's not as predominantly known as, Dodge. If you're talking about Ford, you're looking like 427 side-oiler, or 429 Cobra jet motor, that kind of thing are going to be the big dogs that come into play with that. And then, one that a lot of people don't know about on the Chevy side, I mean, everybody thinks of, 632 cubic inch race motor, what Chevy's known for. And, but one of the most famous motors that is very rare came out in like the 68 Z28, which is a DZ302, which is a small block, high revving motor that Chevy put in that. Yeah. So, it really just depends on what your flavor is what, you would consider to be, the most famous.
Most famous,
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people get popularity and famous mixed up a lot. Yeah. Like yesterday I was having a conversation, I asked one of the other guys, I was like, what do you think is the most famous motor that's ever been made? And immediately he goes, an LS. And I was like, okay, I'm not talking about the most popular, the one that's most used in a lot of applications because of its simplicity, price, and the things that are available to pretty much put it in any platform. But I mean, will the LS probably, as time goes on, will it be probably considered in the same class as some of those other motors? Yeah, but with it being as new, as late model as it is at this particular time, it's just a really popular motor for a lot of applications. But everybody has their own. I mean, what they consider to be their favorite motor, the most famous motor. But I think that when you look at all three and you think, okay, which one stands out about all of them that I talked about? I mean, I think it's synonymous that you say Hemi. Everybody knows what the word Hemi means, what the word Hemi is, which is a big motor that Dodge made. Maybe not necessarily know why it's called that, but they know
what it is, what they're referencing.
And just historically, there's been some engines, and I'll go based off of like one facet, I think, of the triangle, which is reliability. Like, the inline 4 in World War II in the Jeeps was like super famous, right? Super historically important. It ran forever, not only on the battlefield, but then in cars across America. And was, you couldn't break the thing. Things like that. Bulletproof engines is kind of what I go to. The 302 falls in that category as well. People just talk about the Ford 302s. We've got one we're building out there, and they're just super reliable engines. And I really love that because, someone commits to a car, they get something that's really incredible. I think probably in modern times, you're going to hear a lot about what Toyota did in some of their engines that is, super reliable, and why people are overpaying, I think, for Toyotas right now just because of the reliability of them. So a lot of the famous engines, I think, throughout time are the ones that were designed in such a way they don't break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's helpful, Josh. Yeah, I think definitely that. When I think of getting an engine and getting a car, I make it synonymous. How long can it last? Like that's kind of how I think of it too.
Yeah.
I never thought first about how powerful is it. Like that's not how I think about it. Some people
we think about that a lot.
Some people think about that all the time, right? But I'm like, how long will this last? What's the warranty life on this thing? Right? Like that's primarily what I think about. So that's a good point that you bring up. I think for the common person, the novice like me, like that's mainly what I think about. Where like when they start telling you all the details on the horsepower, all the power of the engine, I'm like, I don't care about that, So it's interesting how that kind of comes up of what's the go-to for people. Chris, you're sharing something.
Honestly, I've never really been too big on American stuff. So I've been around Honda, JDM as a whole my whole life. So I got my little rice burner out there. It goes hard, but honestly, I think. Going along with it, like LS is the one that I hear the most, but I know it's not, the best engine to go with. Yeah. I've seen case swaps on everything.
Yeah, at this point. So another super popular one.
Yeah, case swap, and that's I would ask you if you think with case swaps being so popular like LS swaps are, would you put them in that same category as just popular but not famous?
At this point, yeah. I think that once again, as we get through, some time goes by and it becomes, there's more history to the situation, then I think that it'll come into play to where they become, into that same category. Yeah. Because, you can take some of the import motors, but I'm not real familiar with them, unfortunately.
B-Series engines.
Yeah,
B-Series
and
too.
Those things are just absolutely amazing. High revving, high horsepower. You can throw power adders at them. They're kind of really bulletproof. So I think they're going to have their place in history as well, right. To where they have the fame that some of the big horsepower, old school muscle car motors will have.
Small block and Ford came out with the flathead.
Oh yeah,
got the 351.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 351. That's probably the closest thing on the Ford side. 302. Just like Joshua said, it's a very reliable motor. For whenever they came out, they were the big dog as far as horsepower when they first started coming out in the Mustangs, especially in the Fox bodies. That was the car to have because of it. But once they started producing stroker kits and stuff like that for the 351, that became a platform that is just used, all the way across the board when it comes to people that are diehard Ford racers. So you can build big cubic inches out of them. You can build almost a 500 cubic inch motor out of a 351 Windsor with the right block, like a dark block or something like that. But the same thing with the imports that you're talking about. They take those, they buy the aftermarket, blocks for them, and they bore them out, and they put big, larger stroke cranks in them, big pistons, and nice set of heads. It's fitted with that, all of your titanium stuff, and throw power adders at it, man. And I've seen some import cars that are just amazingly quick. That is just unreal. Oh yeah. Unreal. Matter of fact, they have an import versus. American Muscle Challenge. A lot of times, man, the imports walk away with it. They're just so light. And that's the thing that people got to think about. Your power to weight ratio with those things is just absolutely amazing.
Right.
So that's really interesting. I love hearing you guys talk about this stuff. It's really kind of awesome. There's again, I didn't know there's so many kinds of engines. It makes sense with how many kinds of cars and how many brands, and it totally makes sense. But hearing about how they're built and the reason of the weight, like you said, weight to power, kind of interesting to consider that too. Well, it kind of segues to a good question. Again, I know we talk a lot about power in engines here. I'm sure that's kind of how most people that are in the automotive industry think a lot about. Whereas people that aren't like me, it's kind of like you're not thinking about power a lot. You're thinking about reliability primarily, right?
Efficiency.
Yeah, efficiency. How long will the motor go and last, right? And so, good question maybe for us to think about is that when should you buy more power in your engine? When and why should you have a powerful engine in your vehicle? Is it just for show? Is there really a functional reason for it? Is it just cool? So when should there be more power or buying an engine that has a lot of power capability?
Maybe if you're a hobbyist, that's a category that a lot of people buy for bragging rights. You know, they want something big enough to hang with the other guys.
Yeah,
you know, or racing.
That makes sense.
Or towing.
Towing, that makes more sense.
There's the functional side.
There's
like,
the functional.
There's a few things where, you know, and it's what kind of power, right? So you've got horsepower, which is, you know, speed, and torque, which is work. You know, the ability to do work, and there's a lot of that's why a lot of diesels will be on the ability for torque and the low end capabilities on them is like why you would add power in that area, right? So, you know, you're going to see that in your big trucks and your working vehicles are going to have great torque numbers because they got to move heavy things from a stop.
Low speed at high power.
Yeah, low speed at high power. The same thing you're going to see in off-roading. So like overlanding, off-road rock crawling, torque matters way more because you're moving at low speeds and you want to be able to have high degree of control. And that really comes down to power. It's like, how much torque ability do you have as you're turning something versus, you know, if you're trying to go really fast, you'll skip those wheels and lose control on rocks or, you know, in different off-road situations where you really need very powerful, steady movement up and forward. And so torque wins in like low, like rock crawling, off-road overlanding in that world, as well as reliability, you know, in that place. But power most of the time comes in the sport.
In the sport of it,
right? There's a lot of different sports in cars. You know, we kind of have a bunch of different interests around the table, whether that be track or whether that be, you know, drag strip racing or just raw performance. There's a lot of reasons there why you would add power.
I have an easy answer to that question.
Yeah, right.
When should you add power to a car? Always.
That's kind of the answer I was expecting. You know, a little bit.
I mean, it's
more power.
I mean, to me, that's kind of a tunnel vision for me when it comes to that. If there's an opportunity to add power to a car, whether I need it or not, I want it.
Yes.
So,
that's what I was thinking. I mean, I grew up with home improvement, and that's what Tim Taylor used to always say: just more power. Like there's no reason why except for I need more. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I thought too. Is like that's kind of feels like how most people answer that question. Yeah, Chris, how were you? You're gonna share something too.
So to kind of go along with what Joshua was saying, I mean, literally everything. You're either going towards torque or going towards horsepower, especially in motorsport itself. So, you know, you want reliability. Most of the time, you're not really adjusting power, torque, anything like that. But if you're, you know, in the motorsport or using things to work on, then it's like you're starting to get more into the modification side of things. I mean, shoot, even the difference between, like you were saying, between track, drag, and then even rally. Rally's very torquey. It's not very. I mean, they'll adjust horsepower for sure, but they're not gonna skyrocket it. They're more about banging the gears through, getting that torque down, and shooting off on dirt. So I wanted to give Rally a little bit of a
Rally or Baja's the same reason. Anything
off
road, your torque wins. And also, I would say torque wins a lot in drag racing because you know if you're spinning, you're not winning. You know, like it's the ability to get the power to the wheels correctly.
You see sand drags.
And I agree. I mean, you know, a lot of people talk about horsepower numbers, but it truly is a combination if you look at it. You know, there's different ways to do different things. Like in the drag racing world, you could take the same motor and run it on race gas. You know, and it may put out 545 foot-pounds of torque, and it'll put out, 750 horsepower. You switch it to alcohol, it's going to put out 650 foot-pounds of torque and a little less horsepower. So it depends on exactly, you know, what you want, what the purpose that you're using it for. Absolutely. So, and both of those numbers are, you know, critical for, especially with what you're wanting to do if it's a race car of any aspect, because. You know, in the rally thing, I mean, you know, you want the car to be in a functional torque and horsepower operating range at all times, and that's pretty much the same thing with the drag car. You know, when you look at you build a drag car and you're setting it up to where, you know, you're going to determine what RPM you're going to set the two-step to for you to let go of that trans brake button for it to launch. What you do is you look at the dyno numbers and you see where your peak torque is, right where your peak torque is, and at that point, you set it up just above it because obviously when you let go, the load is going to carry it down just a little bit. And then whenever you're looking at your shift points as you go through the run, you're going to look at where your maximum horsepower numbers are so that you're running it in the RPM exactly where it's at the maximum horsepower, and that's when you shift the car. So yeah, every single, both of those come into play in different things. And in each sport, same thing with the rally guys. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, they're constantly watching that tack and seeing where it's at and understanding where the car needs to be, either upshift or downshift to keep it where it's supposed to be.
That's great. And like just again, a lot of things to think about for why. I mean, there's the easy answer, you just need more, but then there's all these different components that go into like what does this look like when it comes to the performance of the engine? Like I said, torque, power. Does it really need horsepower or not? Does it really just need to really have the volume to pull? That's just interesting to think about. I think haven't thought about any of that. So
another it's a good answer. It's fun. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. And so that's why people do it. I mean, why do people go on vacation and spend money on it? Because it's fun. It's okay that it's just fun.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with, like I said, hobbyists or fun or entertainment or just competition with people. And, there's a lot of enjoyment to all that too. That's a great answer. Well, we talked a little bit this morning about choosing a good engine and kind of why we would want power in that engine or why not, and talked a little bit about that. But we also want to talk about challenging traditional thinking around engines too. When should we challenge the traditional thinking? What are some traditional categories that we should probably challenge when it comes to using engines? What kind of engines are the best used for just common people? What might be some good ways for us to challenge traditional thinking surrounding engines?
More power does not always equal more fun.
Yeah, it's true. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes it does not.
Or safety.
Creates more problems, right?
But more power always does equal more money.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, always. That is absolutely true, right? So sometimes it doesn't comport immediately into enjoyment. It could, bring more problems in some ways, right? More expense, right? Absolutely. What might be some other ways we can challenge traditional thinking when it comes to just how people think commonly of engines and what we're all about here?
A lot of people will dog one maker or another.
Yeah.
Ford this or Chevy that or Chrysler this or import that.
Yeah.
Some people are just some people do it all in fun. Some people honestly believe that Ford can't hang or Chevy can't hang or one is superior to the other or whatnot. I think that it just has to be. A lot of those people just don't have a good rounded education in numerous types. What I mean?
Of engines. Yeah.
Yeah. Some people will get hung up because they don't know how that engine operated.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the operation of the engine itself, but I mean like the computer.
Yeah.
How the computer acts. We were just talking about speed density versus math yesterday. Some makes will be solely math, some are solely map, which is the way that the computer is going to give fuel based on some of those inputs there. But a lot of people get hung up on things like that, and I think it would just be to challenge that thinking of I don't like Ford or I don't like Chevy. What I mean? To get in there and find a love for both of them.
That's great, JJ. Kind of talking about just overcoming just ignorance or prejudice that people have towards one or the other. Sometimes it's just good to learn.
Yeah.
About it and not be so narrow-minded, right? Because there's a lot that can be added to it when you're just observing and learning about it too, and not bringing that kind of prejudice to it. That's really good. Just kind of overcoming ignorance a little bit there. Josh, I think
I think the same thing is true when we were talking earlier. Like you've got import and you've got American.
Yeah.
I tend to live in the American. I love like the stuff that we've done, but. There's some great innovation that's happening abroad, and I love seeing innovation in engines. I love people that are doing different things. I love seeing people are trying to get rotary to really work and be reliable and put out a lot, because the torque numbers are great on it. And it's a lighter weight engine, and so that's exciting work that's being done there. The same thing I think is true of like hydrogen, which is obviously we don't have the infrastructure for it, but I love that people are doing stuff like that. I love that people are looking at different fuels. They're looking at different methodologies. I think that's how we become better as an industry, And I really enjoy kind of like tapping into the different levels of innovation and what different manufacturers are doing and how they're thinking about things differently. Like Toyota focusing on reliability, others focusing on high revving engines. Like those are just different philosophies. America, it's a lot of really powerful torque off the line, raw horsepower numbers, moving, heavy cars fast, right? And we've done that for a long time in a straight line. But then internationally, everything is about track and nimbleness in Europe, and you're just seeing different philosophies around engines, and you can learn a lot by, like JJ said, studying and then across those types of things. And so I like that they're just in general challenging the typical thinking around engines and not saying this is how we do it and we've made it the most cheap and economical way possible and let's keep making it cheaper and cheaper. I think the consumer loses on that. I think simplicity loses on that. I think complexity starts to take over. I'd like to challenge that in manufacturers that are out there. Like they've gotten so overly complex that it's almost when recalls are happening, when things are failing. And I really, challenge them to look at the numbers on how much they're actually paying out in the back end, both in brand and in like failing engines, because they've made them overly complex, and the computers are getting in the way. I'd love to see a thinking that goes back to analog, but computers being a hovering entity that allows you to understand your engine better, service your engine better, and understand when things and preemptively when things are going wrong. We'll work on stuff like that here at C.A.R. We'll do a lot of technology innovation here to try to get that, and we can do it with these older vehicles because they're all analog, super reliant on that methodology, but inject technology when it's needed, not all the time. Not try to solve it real quickly with code. Solve it with the best, most simplest, most reliable methodology possible, right? And so we're kind of treating our bay as a lab to learn that, and then start injecting things where it makes sense and where it's enhancing the customer experience or things like that. And I don't think that's the traditional model. I think it's real cheap to make code, so we're going to put everything in tech and we're going to do everything in the computer, and things have moved a certain way that I don't think is benefiting the consumer, the mechanic that works on the vehicle, or the longevity of the vehicle itself. Or there's a bunch of situations where the computer just shuts down the car and people are left stranded, or they scrap the car after that just because of a computer issue.
The computer's there to it shuts down to protect the rest of the vehicle from damaging itself. But they're stuck stranded on the side of the road and having to call someone. They're going to have to pay all the tow fees to get the car back to the dealership, or pay someone X amount of money to come out and diagnose the car on the side of the road. So it is.
And they're terrified to move out of warranty, right? Because there's so many issues that it's almost become a reliability. So cars are being thrown away quicker, which it makes a lot of money to the manufacturers, but puts people at a much bigger. There's more car debt in America than there's ever been, and it's creating a tremendous burden on the individual. And so I'd love to see that thinking change.
That's good.
What you said, and it's kind of it's frustrating all the way across the board. It really is when it comes to being a consumer. Not many people actually have the knowledge to understand how to diagnose something that's going on with vehicles nowadays. And the manufacturers have I believe, intentionally put that in play, so that it has to go back. I mean, when they started, producing vehicles that you yourself as the consumer driver or whatever can't even check your own oil without taking it to the dealer and having them put it on a computer. There's logic behind that is beyond just, creating that for simplicity for them.
Yes, dependency.
Right, exactly. It becomes a situation where they want you to rely on bringing it back, which is where, once again, they profit from selling the vehicle and they profit from servicing it as well. So
it saves them money on diag. If you was to go out there and you take a shade tree mechanic and you go try to diagnose this, high circuited vehicle, highly smart circuited vehicle, and you go in there and try to jumper a couple wires that you could do back in the day and you can't do now, and you damage a computer or a 5-volt reference system or something like that, and then you got to take it in for what would have been thought of as a warranty, and they get in there and the dealership's having to pay a whole bunch of money to try to track down and diagnose these issues because someone wasn't qualified to know what they were doing. So I understand a lot of why they want you to bring your car in there, but it just makes you depend on them
for everything.
And, they'll send you a message now about when it's time to come get your oil changed, or when you got a check engine light or something like that. It's able to message you or let you know, or tells the dealership or something like that. So we're highly dependent on the dealerships.
Highly.
And I'm challenging people to think differently about how they're buying their next car. If you're about to go spend $70,000-$80,000 on a new truck, like, come and build your dream car with us instead. Yeah. Like, go back in time to something more reliable. I've had at least 5 people talk to me about just going and getting an analog engine from the 80s, get their classic square body truck as their next new driver, because they just don't want that dependency and reliability. I'm going to go learn me a little bit more about engines, and I'm going to dig in a little bit more, but I don't like that they can shut me down, or that I'm highly dependent, right?
Turn you off.
And there's all kinds of, security controls that are concerning, I'm, in the cybersecurity space, that's a huge concern that has never been used, but could be. So there's just all kinds of stuff that comes with that, that I think, think about it differently. Maybe take that same money and buy your dream car.
Go back in time.
Yeah.
One of the worst things I've seen with dealerships specifically, because I've worked at dealerships, it's a whole ballgame. Like, it's when you're talking about dependency with the dealership, every time you walk in that dealership, they're gonna take that as an opportunity to upsell you on another car. So it's always this revolving door. They're like, hey, we'll give you this car, and then in a year they give you another one, and that's why people just throw away their cars so fast, because the dealership's always on your butt every time you go in. But some dealerships aren't like that, like the family-owned ones, but most of them, most of the big ones, that's an opportunity for them to. Yeah, exactly. So that's
kind of a dependency mindset.
Exactly.
Which is, I think, kind of what you all are referencing here to a large degree, is this kind of thinking that is the customer's dependent upon the manufacturer.
Right.
Instead of saying there's kind of this collaboration, involved, or, hey, I'm going to build my own vehicle, with shops that want to do that, right? And so, again, it sounds like
or manufacturers serving
the public, right? So there is a lot of kind of just philosophy behind that needs to be challenged. Like I said,
for sure,
take it back in time. Right? I think that's why a lot of people build older cars, because they like that philosophy of thinking too, not just the vehicle itself. It's the mentality of it too. Yeah, so there's this kind of cultivating and kind of creation mindset behind that, instead of just dependency, right? And having to go in and almost no responsibility in a sense, right? So there's some good things for us to bring up there.
There's an adverse effect from generation to generation as everything has evolved as well, because it's kind of embarrassing, when you think about it as men, or even as women, as far as it goes. You have people that are in their mid-20s, late 20s, maybe even early 30s, that if they end up on the side of the road with a flat tire, they have no clue how to even change a tire.
Yeah, fish out of water.
I mean, whenever cars were something you worked on yourself all the time, and you weren't depending on a dealership or a shop, because right now the mindset that people have is, well, I can't work on it, so why do I need to know?
That's right.
But unfortunately, something as simple as changing a tire is just something from generation to generation has just dissipated.
Yes.
It starts at the home.
It does. Even like checking checking the oil. With vehicles that you're able to check the oil. Taking a look at your coolant reservoir, seeing what your power steering fluid looks like. All of those things at a very young age. I was doing with every car that I had.
Yeah. I was in my friends' cars.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, now you have young men and women that are on the if they get a flat tire, have no clue what a tire iron is, or what a jack looks like.
Is, or anything.
That's why we kind of here at C.A.R. created like powertrains, so that we could, we've opened up to the public. If you don't know that, just reach out to us, and we've got a couple of classes to teach you emergency preparedness, which is like side of road, jumping your vehicle, all of that kind of stuff. Or if you just want to maintain your car for life, And the reason we did that is to help address that problem. Like, we don't want to just say, hey, there's a problem. We want to say, here's the solution. And we hope that more shops do things like that. Just open up to the public, like teach them the skills. I think you should get a driver's license and then you should take one of these classes. That's great. Right? Because that will equip you for life. Like, you never know when you need that situation. You never know where that situation is going to happen and how dangerous it is where you're physically stopped. So it's just really important to just become a little more self-reliant, outsource a little less of your life.
Yeah, well, love that word outsource. I think that's the key problem, is that when you're being told to outsource everything, right, is the issue. And that's not just with vehicles, that's with most of life, right? It's kind of like JJ was saying, if it starts in the home, outsourcing from the start, then everything becomes outsourced, right? There has to be some sense of what's my responsibility here to my own life, right? So again, some good things to challenge and think progressively through, like, hey, how do we challenge that kind of ongoing mindset and kind of throw back here, but then, at the same time, grow with innovation too. Well, we keep talking about this. Is kind of awesome. See what you guys have to think about this. But I just wanted for time to move forward and kind of wrap us up with, kind of two questions in one, really, to finish us up. There's a lot of discussion around, hey, engines need to be worked on and repaired. When should an engine really be replaced would be a question I'd love for you all to talk about. Because really in the scriptures, which we also believe, a lot of this work parallels the spiritual life. Right? We talked a lot about maintenance today. We talked about some of these things, but also parallels to the Christian life as well. But when it comes to replacing an engine, when is it necessary to do that? And then the second question is, how does God do that, right? How does God replace the heart, which is the engine of the human person, right? So first question is, when should we replace instead of repair? When should we replace an engine instead of repair? Who wants to?
Once it's beyond repair.
Yeah.
And if you carried out preventative maintenance throughout the life, you're gonna be you'll be able to carry that engine on for quite a while.
Yeah.
Keeping up maintenance, changing your oil regularly, tune-ups regularly, brakes, things like that. That helps, less load on the engine there. Whenever you are to the end of your engine's life, you're going to notice that nothing that you do is going to help your engine anymore.
It's going to fix it.
You're going to start making funny noises, knocking or ticking, or just idling funny, lack of power. It's being bogged down all the time. It's not breathing anymore like it used to.
The airflow's not working, right?
So at that point, when you're spending too much money on it, that you could have bought a new engine by now. So basically, that's when you need to start looking for a new engine.
That's helpful, JJ. Joshua?
Yeah, you can do a lot of research around, like, here's what everyone is typically having catastrophic failure on an engine, and look at that. That's going to be different per engine. Like Toyotas, they'll go a lot longer, or like something else. They're just, you could project that, you could throw that into a chat GPT and it'll tell you, like, here's the typical failure rates of these things. So, like, that's a good, like, rubric, because a lot of people will do it under 100,000. They'll just get rid of their car because you start having failures above 100,000 on most engines today. So they don't want to run into those failures. Their sale rate, their cost of sale is higher, stuff like that. But I think a better way of thinking of it is looking at what is that engine actually able to do. If I'm doing all the proper maintenance and giving it its best shot over the course of the life of it. Same is true with transmissions. Like, change your oil on your transmissions. But I think another thing that you've got catastrophic failure, and most times people will throw away the car. But sometimes what you should do is just look at the cost of replacing that engine. You get basically a brand new heart. For that engine, for that car, right? And now your clock just reset on that engine. And the cost of that versus a brand new vehicle is drastically less. And that's what I'm looking to do with my own vehicle. We just did it with my transmission. I'm going to use these problems as an opportunity for an upgrade. Now, I will say it's highly inconvenient sometimes because you may be out of a car
for a while.
But when you still look at the math, it's way better than buying a brand new vehicle, signing up for that much more debt in amongst your family. So, like, the ability to be debt-free on a vehicle own that vehicle outright, and then to get as much life out of that vehicle is really good financially for families to unlock them from this system of concern, worry, and doubt. And then get yourself a great mechanic. Talk around to people, look for trustworthy groups. You know, I love that my in-laws have a great mechanic in Oklahoma City. They've just been using them for generations. They're honest, they're fair, and they're out there. They're harder to find, but they're out there. We're a great shop for that too, and that's what we want to do. Our biggest differentiator, it seems to be honesty. That is a rarity. But if you can find it, if you can go through, people that that have great mechanic, you now have a partnership to be able to do something really meaningful, help keep your family in a good financial place, and I'd encourage you to prepare for those moments instead. Is once you pay off your car note, just take that same money and that you were paying and keep paying to yourself for a catastrophic failure. So you're great. I have that money. Don't just add it in and start consuming it in your life. Just put it to the side for a rainy day fund, whether that is an emergency fund for your family, or it's for your engine to replace, or it's for the next vehicle you want to purchase. You will have a bulk of funds that help reduce your debt in the future. You're basically giving yourself a future loan, and I think that that's a great way of thinking about it, so that you don't run into the issues where we don't have that choice because I have to get a vehicle right now and I need to get to work. You could use some of those funds for a rental for a period of time, or buy a less expensive vehicle for a short period of time and then just sell it, which is what we should have done. Those types of things become available to you if you're thinking about that fiscally smart.
Yeah. Well, kind of awesome to hear. Kind of there's two sides of it. It seems like, obviously one out of necessity, right? You have this reality of repairs don't lead to repairing anymore. It's just broken. It's systemically broken, and therefore it demands replacement. There's also the reality is that there's just going to be a time where the finances don't make sense anymore too, right? So I think there's a sense of, hey, this happens at some point for every vehicle when it comes to a need for replacement. And I do find it interesting, especially in the Bible, the Old Testament kind of talks about the human person in the center of that human person as the heart, which is kind of a strange way of thinking, because in our culture, American culture, we think of the heart, we think just like the organ itself. We don't really think of a spiritual center. But the Bible talks about the heart as a spiritual center, kind of headquarters of a person. And there's no more ability to repair. Here's what the Bible's saying. It's like, you are too far gone. We can't repair you well, okay? We can't repair you to health, is what the Bible's saying, which is, again, pretty dramatic thing to think about, because when you think about replacing an engine, that's drastic, isn't it? That's why most people are like, let's just scrap the car, right? So it is kind of a dramatic thing to think about, but the Bible talks about human hearts needing replacement, casually, in an interesting way. So I thought I'd finish by reading this passage and just finishing up with the question about why is it so important for God to give us a new heart? And why do we need a whole heart from God? What's the goal of this, okay? So it says this in Ezekiel 36, 26, and 27. God promises in his new covenant that he will give us a new heart, a new spirit, and he's going to put it within us. He's going to remove the heart of stone, the Bible says, from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh, like a living one, a breathing one, a beating one, it says. And I will put my spirit within you, cause you to walk in my statutes, and to carefully obey my rules. Wow. I mean, what a promise.
Beautiful.
I mean, it's just like, he's like, you're not functioning. I'm going to surgically remove this. I'm going to put this new one in with my spirit, which is the third person of the Trinity, and I'm going to cause you to beat and walk and love me again. Wow. I mean, this is incredible. So it just shows you kind of the condition we're in before this happens, right? So I think the first part is, why is it so important to God to give us this new heart, this new center, this headquarter change in us, just like an engine would need to be replaced? Why is that so important in God's kingdom?
I think the same two rules apply. Either life has worn you down.
Yeah.
Because no one walks through this life unscathed.
Yeah.
And the heart, it takes the biggest beating.
Yeah.
And same thing with the engines, especially if you don't care for your heart and you don't do the maintenance on your heart, which most people don't do the maintenance on their own heart.
Yeah.
You end up with an engine that, is corroded and hurting and broken, such that it's throwing off all kinds of dangerous things to the people around it, right? Just like an engine. And that's the first one. But unfortunately, what I tend to see when people do come to Christ for a heart replacement is catastrophic failure. I mean, it is bottom of the barrel. You have hit rock bottom. The hammer has fallen on your life, and you need a savior. And you know you need a savior. This is how it happened for me. Is, you know, unfortunately, and I've been trying to, like, how do we get people out of that cycle? But unfortunately, most people, it's the hammer, or it's the catastrophic failure where we threw a rod on the side of the road. Like it is that is happening. Now, if you're a mechanic, you're like, replace an engine, yeah, we can do that, right? Like, because you've done it before and you've walked through that. But it's that fear of the unknown that's the same scare that people have as they're giving their life to Jesus and saying, well, no, like a heart replacement, that sounds like I'm going to die. Yeah, you will die and you will be born again. And you will be born again. And it's that same joy that we all experience when an engine fires for the first time. It's probably the best part of a new car. I'm really looking forward to it on the Cardinal. But like when that launches for the first time, that car has been given new life. And it has been made a new creation that I would say is better than the original. And so is with God. And that replacement of the heart sounds catastrophic, but the old man has to die because it has been deemed like worthless or like not able to be used. But instead of throwing away the vessel, he renews it completely, just like he's going to do to this earth, just like he's doing with his church right now. Like all of it is being revamped, revitalized, restored, and made new, and because of either catastrophic failure or a lifetime of hurt.
And I think it's also interesting, you said really well, Joshua, is that I think the way we all think, is, usefulness, right? The vehicle's no longer useful because the engine's dead, it doesn't work, it can't be repaired, so let's just scrap it, right? God is not like that. Like, God does not think like that or work like that. That is not how he does things. He says the heart's dead, I love the person, right? So I'm going to replace the heart, make him alive. Like, whoa. Instead of like, eject, done with you. Like, that's how we think, because we think of stuff as just functional, but we're not stuff to God. We're persons. We're creations. We're image bearers, the Bible says.
He's trying to get us from point A to point B. Whether it's at the beginning of the drag strip to the end of the drag strip.
That's right.
Well, in order to do that, he's got to give us a new engine, so to speak.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's what it has to happen.
Heart to get us
That's right.
from here to here.
That's right.
This road is sanctification, so to speak.
That's right.
What's interesting about that is like in the most intense drag strips, like funny cars, they get a new engine every time.
That's right. That's right. They use them up, right?
If you think about it, really, so if you want to put it in real terms to kind of give a parallel, you look at the difference between what I would say, like if you think that God is like a car enthusiast.
He likes cars.
Absolutely.
But I'm looking at, so he kind of looks at us as the same way a car enthusiast. So here's the thing. So you had this, you've had this car and you've had plans for it for the whole time you've owned it. And you've used it, and now you're in a situation where you have to make a choice. Are you going to dispose of the car? The engine failed. Are you going to dispose of the car? Or are you going to put a new motor in? You're going to keep that car because it's something you love.
That's right.
And that's exactly the way God looks at us.
That's right.
He loves us. He's not going to dispose of us. He's going to put a new engine in us.
That's right.
And he's going to keep us, and he's going to continue that plan that he has for us, just like that enthusiast would with that
That's
car.
right. And it's a great way of thinking about it, Ray, is the aspect that God, the way he looks at us, because he's the one who created us. He built us in the original, realities of he made us in his image.
Right.
So we're not from somewhere else, we're from him.
Right.
So it makes total sense that he loves, he doesn't dispose of, he replaces, he doesn't get rid of. And I mean, the more you think about that, the more you're like, who is this God? Like, I want to serve him, right? And that's kind of how it works with him. And it's a beautiful parallel. When we think of replacing engines and how cool engines are, I'm like kind of blown away by like all the things about them. But it's complex, right? So it's going to take a miracle in a way to replace that. And that's what the Bible says. There's this miracle that God does where he goes in there like a heart surgeon and he literally removes and replaces, and it's like working, like fires up brand new, and you're like, I now want to walk with God. I actually really love what he says. I really want to do what he says. I don't always do it, but I want to. And suddenly there becomes this new walking with God. And so you look like a different person.
Here's the cooler part I like about it, is that just like a car enthusiast, if we're going to pull that motor out and we're going to put something else in it, we're going to put something better.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly it. Something even cooler.
And that's exactly what he does.
That's exactly right, brother.
He takes out that heart that we had that wasn't of him for that whole time.
That's right.
And he puts in a better one.
That's
he
right.
puts in one that has more power.
That's right. More power, man.
More horsepower. Has more torque.
And he's a great technician.
That's exactly right.
You know, he's a great technician. I also want to say, like, there is also a promise. And think about this as a car enthusiast. There is, in heaven, when we build cars, they will not rust. And they will not corrode.
That's right, man.
And they will not pass away.
That's right.
You'll have an efficient engine that will never rust and never wear down. Imagine building something there in a time to come that will never have it. And the same thing is true about how he is building these new hearts and these new engines. His maintenance plan is very different than the world, right? Yes. And they'll tell you self-help books and see a counselor and do all these things. But then there's God's, just spend time with me every day, son.
Right,
and you will have a heart that will not wear, it will not pass away, and it will not fade, and that is true, right? And so that's exciting for me. Is like thinking about that, and also as a car enthusiast, like oh man, in heaven I get to build cars that never like break down, and I can keep them forever. They don't become rust buckets. You know, like it's gonna be great. So.
Yeah, well, kind of amazing for us to think about this. Is that's really what God is saying. Which is so encouraging. It's not just us waxing on things saying, hey, this is idealistic. That's actually what the Bible's promising. Right. And that's, like you were saying, Ray, that God replaces it with something more powerful, more beautiful, more lovely than the first. That's exactly what he does. And again, that's why it's called the new covenant. You know, it's better. And, you know, that's what it's saying, right? It's not like the old one that you broke and just shows that you were in disrepair. Let me give you this new one. The repair, that's right. And it's like the warranty is for eternity. I mean, that's kind of
much better warranty.
Yeah, that's right. The Bible's saying like eternal warranty won't break. I mean, it's kind of incredible. So I think we're saying as we finish up with the parallels, God is the great physician and the great technician.
He's the great technician.
From what he's saying. So pretty awesome to think about that, guys. Well, thank you for coming this morning and chatting and spending time together and enlightening me and so many others I'm sure that will listen to hear about kind of how engines work and kind of what's good, what's not good, why do we upgrade, you know, what's the use of power, why do we need more power and things like this, but also how to think outside the box of what's been kind of handed to us about engines as well has been really encouraging to me. So I really appreciate our discussion. And for our listeners, again, always want to direct you to our website at crossautomotiveroyale.com. If you have any inquiries for business or partnership questions that you have for us, or even just merchandise is on there. And this is our 4th episode. We will record again episode 5 next week, and we'll continue our work on just parallel discussions between the car business, automotive industry, and God's kingdom. Until then, signing off.
Build your adventure.